Hey, good point, Bruce.
I'm joined, well, good catch, right? I'm joined today by my colleague at Critigen, Loren Mueller. And forgive me in advance because I have a buddy here in Pennsylvania and he spells his name exactly the same way and he goes by Mueller. So I may, every once in a while, I might say Loren Mueller, what completely
inadvertent. That is okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Listen, I'm glad you're here. This live stream happens every Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. if you're on the West Coast, and you can do the math for everything in between. And the Graybeard Talks Geospatial is a continuing discussion about topics about working in the field of geospatial and GIS. And I will interview several colleagues of mine, plus industry experts and industry luminaries from time to time, to get their perspective on what's going on. So I appreciate everybody coming time and time again. I appreciate your willingness to take a few minutes out of your day to listen to these conversations. We also just got these conversations put up as on our website in the About section of the Critigen website. You can go in there and you can see the Graybeard at Critigen, and you can access all of these recordings there. Or if you want to go to Critigen's YouTube channel, you can access them there as well. Significantly, I'm simulcasting this today on Clubhouse. We've got 3 listeners on Clubhouse who are listening to the live stream. And if you're on Clubhouse, I've turned off the hand raising, so there's nobody coming up on stage. It's just a way to listen to the live stream. And I hope that you can give me some feedback on the quality. So Loren, welcome to the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. I'm glad to have you as a guest. Ever since we started talking, I've been looking forward to this.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, so have I. It's exciting to be here. Appreciate the invite.
You got a lot to say, and one of the things maybe some of our listeners, well, most of our listeners won't know this, that you are the quote-unquote voice of social media for Critigen. In other words, Loren raised his hand and said, "Hey, I can do that." And what he's doing is he does all the posting for us on social media, and then also he responds as the voice of Critigen in that way as well. How are you liking that so far, Loren?
I like it. It's a relatively new role that I'm playing, but I like it so far. It's really neat to interact with the social media aspects of the company, and we got some really cool tools that we can use to manage posts and send our message out, and also to interact with folks who want to interact with us as well, or comment on our posts or things like that.
Right.
So I'm liking it so far. I think it's going to be a dynamic role that grows.
Good. I'm glad to see you doing it. When we first envisioned this role at our company, we were trying to think of somebody who had the whole breadth of experience at Critigen, so that he or she could speak for Critigen with all the different comments we get in our social media feed. And so, if you saw any of the lead up to this discussion, you'll know that what I said was that Loren is kind of the jack of all trades. Like, he's done it all here. So we're going to dive into that. That's one of the reasons he's qualified to be the voice of Critigen, is because he has this huge breadth of experience. And so we're going to dive into some of that. But first of all, just tell me, where'd you grow up? Where do you live now? And just, a couple things you do with your life so that we can give the listeners some context of who Loren Mueller is.
Sure. Let's see. I grew up just west of Boston, a suburb called Newton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, heard of it. All right. Early 20s, moved cross country to Colorado, spent about 10 years there, got my master's degree in Colorado, CU Denver, and then headed west again, ended up here in Washington. So now I'm up a little north of Seattle in Bellingham, Washington.
I was just at lunch with a friend of mine who was telling me that his brother just drove all the way across country to Bellingham, Washington, to pick up an antique Jeep.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. He said that they have a lot of antique cars out there that you can pick up for cheap. Anyway, that's beside us. What kinds of things do you do for recreation? What do you do for fun?
Sure. Yeah. Well, just been getting back into mountain biking again recently. We have amazing mountain biking trails. So we're a bit of a destination for mountain bikers. And also for the past 9 years, although I've been on a bit of a leave. Underwater hockey is a sport I like to play, and no one's ever heard of it.
Underwater hockey.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
No, it's not. You're just Mike put you up to this. We wanted you to yank my chain, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, Mike loves his story, right? So underwater hockey. Google it. I won't. I could spend 45 minutes talking about it, but I'll just stop there.
Okay, that's. I will Google it. I promise you, I'll Google it, and I'll let the listeners know if it's you just pulling my leg. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, so let's talk shop then. Let's just talk a little bit about the business. Tell me, your role as a solutions architect. Is that correct? Is that what you do?
Yeah, well, it's one of the hats I wear for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, task lead, project management, solution architecture. Over time, been an analyst, a map maker, report builder, right? And then moving into software development. Did that for a long time. I was heavy in the software development side of things. Yes, and now the later days to current, more of the first ones we were talking about. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've done quite a few things, even more than I knew, actually. Like I was focusing on some bigger buckets of services. It sounds like you've been involved in even some of the smaller ladles of services that we offer.
Oh, yeah.
I like to talk about Critigen services in terms of like three big buckets, right? Implementation, integration, innovation, development, that kind of thing. And I think you've been involved at all stages of that GIS work. Let's just take the first one. Tell me about your work in GIS implementation. What have you been involved in?
Sure. Well, a recent project that is probably good to highlight would be South Jersey Industries, implementing a large migration to the utility network for gas for those guys. That went into production, a little over a year ago now. And that was a really exciting and cool project to be on. Everywhere from the solution architecture side of it to the actual implementation and seeing the plan come to fruition and go live,
So that was utility network. There was integration there as well?
Yeah, there was. We were integrating with other systems, other asset management systems, customer systems.
Okay.
The integration piece and, utility network is probably a lot of what'll come up today as I'm chatting. It's where my head is. It's what I've been working in for 3-4 years now. But integration tends to be a big part of it with other systems.
So what were the significant pieces to that project? It included utility network. It also included a new Esri platform. Is that right?
Yes. So the GIS implementation was really getting an upgrade, a big upgrade. The ESRI implementation at the time was not really this full-fledged enterprise system, and that's basically where it was going at the time of the project. So we were involved in the solution architecture of what that was going to look like, including high availability, a high level of service for uptime for the system was expected. And so the high availability component came into it for really fault tolerant system, right? Mm-hmm. And that got implemented as well. So that was really, really exciting part to be involved with.
Well, tell me about the high availability system. What are some of the nuances? What are some of the challenges that come with designing and implement a high availability system for them?
Sure. Yeah. One of the challenges for sure is that, especially with GIS, maybe moving from maybe not like a top tier system or critical system within an organization, the high availability and the enterprise, it just brings a whole bunch of new machines involved. The high availability, you're duplicating machines at a lot of different tiers within the ArcGIS enterprise, from your portal, your data store, your ArcGIS servers, however many of those you have spread out, your web adapter, your web server. A lot of things are getting duplicated to pick up that machine failure in case you have any sort of machine failure along the way. And that can be a big surprise to an IT department that's used to perhaps 3 or 4 servers going for their ArcGIS enterprise. Now you're talking about numbers in the teens and maybe more. That can be a challenge because it's where you're going. It's what the business is looking for. It's what your SLA, your service level agreement, sort of is pointing towards. But there, of course, there's the challenges of cost and of maintaining that system, which might be new. So,
yeah. What, and I think this is the one where there were 30. Did I remember right? 38 different applications that needed to be upgraded at the same time. Does that? And how many of those did we connect the GIS to?
oh boy, that's a number I don't have at the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 20 though, Bruce. Yeah, there's, from field workers to people in the office, pro users to just to people who need to interact perhaps at a very small level with as a reference, right? Your network. There are a lot of users and a lot of use cases for the utility network. Yeah. So there are typically a lot of migrations, not just of data, right, but of the applications that you're currently interacting with the network with, right?
Right, for sure. And we integrated with Maximo. Is there any special challenges there that you can enumerate for the listeners that you can just kind of say, well, this was a special challenge that we dealt with?
Sure. Interacting with the hierarchical structure of Maximo and how best to do that was definitely it boiled down to some custom integrations via the REST server, the REST endpoints of ArcGIS server in most of the cases, which came off just fine. But that was a sort of a technical challenge there.
Yeah. You worked with our project manager on there was Bruce Taylor, right?
Yeah, Bruce Taylor.
Tell me about working with Bruce. He was a guest on the Graybeard early in its infancy, and he was a good guest. But tell me about some of the fun working for Bruce.
Oh, working with Bruce is fantastic. He is such an inspiration and great guy to learn from in how to manage a project, how to manage a relationship. And I learned so much. I learned so much working with Bruce, and I can't wait to work with him again. So he's definitely one of the guys I look up to here and look to for advice and look to for inspiration and education on how to do a better job in what I'm trying to do. So.
Sure. Well, that's good. Okay, so that's SJI. What other projects have you been on that we can talk about? I mean, you don't have to tell the names of the customers, but maybe you could. Are there other clients that we've worked with that you thought were pretty interesting projects?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Currently I'm working on a project, and I don't know if I'm allowed to talk names, so I won't. Which is another utility network migration in the gas space. And again, it's so exciting to be working in a large organization, which yes, has roots in GIS, it has roots in some ESRI technologies, but working with their GIS champions. Thinking about this earlier in our conversation that was coming up, the idea of the GIS champion, which I used to hear a lot more 10, 15 years ago within an organization. I think at that time, GIS was coming into fruition at organizations. It was a brand new thing, right? Hey, what's this GIS thing? Let's get it. Let's add it. I feel like that role in this utility network space right now, where we're helping customers move into the new UPDM model and the new Esri utility network, I feel like that role of GIS champion has really come back around again. And internally, what I'm seeing are these champions really trying hard and pushing and helping the organization move towards this new technology. And this
you're saying as a result, the utility network, or as a result of a move to a new data model, that you feel like that somebody has to get out there and champion that in the organization to get buy-in?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a big move because that utility network change, again, it can have those costs, those big costs associated with it. It can move GIS from perhaps its role as a visual aid, a map maker. It helps make reports, but maybe it's not really a critical system, right, within the organization. And what I'm seeing is that this move to the utility network is bumping that GIS system into that critical system realm for an organization.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity. So now, so tell me, what is it about utility network that moves GIS from being just an engineering or a planning tool into a critical business system in the IT landscape? Tell me, what is it about utility network that helps make that happen? What does it do?
Well, yeah, I think that UPDM data model and the utility network tools that you're putting on top of it is shifting some of that data ownership to the GIS databases. And that right there is a critical shift from perhaps another system of record to the geodatabase, say, for the GIS system. And that alone is putting the whole stack of technology on top of it as the owner, right, of this very important set of data for the business.
Are you thinking of data like, for instance, in a gas transmission business, maybe data like leak data that traditionally may have been somewhere else in the organization, and now they're saying, oh, hey, this leak data is fundamentally location based. Let's put it in the GIS.
Yeah, no, leak is a great example. There could be a legacy system that's really sort of the current owner of the leak data, right? There could be a representation or duplication of it within the GIS and some sort of synchronization going on. But right, you're going to shift that into your GIS system. Now, okay, we can get rid of this legacy system perhaps. We have to be able to duplicate what we were doing with leak build, right? The migration of applications and use cases. But now that GIS database and the GIS system is the new owner, right, of that data.
So if GIS owns the leak data from now on, right? I think it used to be owned by those who collected it. So now is the GIS organization responsible for collecting it?
Well, through the GIS system, in a way, yeah, storing and keeping it, right?
Through field applications, right? Then they're they're collecting data, and it's going directly to the GIS instead of some third-party system somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so you mentioned transportation data as well. The new APR tools, ArcGIS pipeline referencing, like for linear referencing. Transmission, I know I keep using gas, that's kind of where my head's at, but transmission data in a gas.
That's not all you do. We want to emphasize that, but let's talk gas for a few more minutes.
Yeah, okay. Might be in a legacy system separate from a distribution system, right? With the new tools you can enable in your enterprise GIS, the center line of your network for distribution and transmission can all live in the same place. And you can still have all those linear referencing tools that perhaps are being provided by a very different set of software. And you're eliminating some duplication within your system. So I think that's kind of cool. That's really cool.
So we got a question, and I'm just going to use this as a time to say we want questions. So stump Loren on this. Keith Russell said, so Keith says, why not direct access to the subject database? Why is that not best practices now with utility network?
Oh, well, I think in integration stuff, and I don't want to mix up integration data with the GIS data. So we have the GIS data getting stored in your GIS database, but yes, there's still going to be other systems of record for other data that, you're going to integrate with in other databases. I don't know if that's sort of where the question was leaning, but
we'll let Keith decide. If you need to refine that, please do.
Okay.
Darren asks a good question too. It says, is there a responsible data custodian as distinct from the systems they use? So do they have some organization as part of data governance or data custody that is that is, maybe outside of the system?
Is there a responsible data custodian as distinct from the systems they use?
Like in your experience, say the project you're working on right now, does that description fit what they're doing?
I would say the data, custodian. Yes. So if the system is going to be the GIS system, right, you're storing your data there, they might be facilitating the storage of that data, but maybe it's a specific business group that's going to be the custodian or owner of that data. I'm not sure if that's quite where that question is leaning.
I'm not sure either. I'm not the guy, but Bruce Taylor is on. You're
hey,
the guy.
Look at that, Bruce Taylor.
So he's answering Keith and saying, Keith, service-oriented architecture is the answer to that question. So I'm assuming that you know what that means.
SOA, service-oriented architecture.
You want to talk about SOA for a minute?
Not really.
Okay. Well, we won't then. So let's talk. That's okay. Let's talk about application.
Well, I mean, I can dive into it, and maybe I'm not sure which Bruce Taylor was referring to, which of those two questions.
He was referring to the first one about direct access to subject databases. Okay.
Well, I mean, the SOA. So Esri's model now is so service oriented, and I don't know if this is where Bruce was leaning. But you can interact so much with the back end of Esri through the services they provide at the ArcGIS server level, those REST endpoints. And that might be where Bruce was heading with that. I'm not sure. But a lot of the softwares actually have these service-oriented architectures, so that integration point can happen via these RESTful calls between systems.
Yeah, that's probably. I bet that's exactly where he is headed with that. So thanks. Yeah, no, he'll let us know.
I'll ask him later. He'll let me know.
He might even give us another comment to say, yeah, Loren, you got that right. But one of the things that when we talked about this to prep for this, I noticed that in a lot of these larger programs, not only are we doing some implementation integration, but we're also doing some application development that supports that entire enterprise. And Bruce Taylor just said, yeah, with an exclamation point. So I think you got that one right. Bruce should be happy. So talk to me about some of the interesting application development stuff you've done and how that supports these larger programs.
Sure, or even been on the periphery of, but app dev, I have a history in app dev here at Critigen for sure. And it was interesting how that has shifted over the years, from building straight up web apps to solve business problems, right? Earlier 10 years ago, 8 years ago, using JavaScript API, building web apps. These days we have so many custom apps and like web app builder and ways of just easily standing up applications, that a lot of this development now has shifted from, I would say, developing the business front end tools to actually maintaining the system itself. A lot of the development now is around the DevOps. I mean, there's definitely customization for sure at the client side still going on, but a lot of the neat stuff I'm seeing is with maintaining the system between environments, say DevOps between a test environment and a production environment, automation tools that help you move portal content from one environment to another. Maybe that's your dev to your test, or your test to your production. And those are really important environments also as well. I mean, we were talking earlier about system architecture and some of the big changes that might come in a UN migration. But standing on multiple environments too is also can be one of those big pills to swallow. Like, oh, we're shooting for a test environment that mirrors production, or a QA environment that mirrors production. So, I mean, that's kind of a big one as well. Right. I diverge.
No, that's good. So you're saying I think what you're telling me is that we're really in a low code environment. We're mostly in a managing the different ways in which your development is implemented, right? More
Yeah, I
so,
would say a
more
lot
so,
of that.
more so than the custom coding.
I think a lot of that custom development now is the integration points and maintaining the system from environment to environment. Those DevOps stuff. Yeah, not to
Yeah.
say there's not a need for front end development going on, but so many tools are now provided out of the box for developing simple, like web apps and applications, things like that.
Do you find that we are developing web ops to support defined workflows that are already defined by the customer, or are we going in and suggesting workflows, or I mean, how do our projects normally work that way?
I think it's a combination. I
Okay.
think there's really common things that organizations need to do with content from one environment to another. So that kind of DevOps conversation where, oh, I have, these 30 maps and layers and apps and things that I store in my portal, right? And I've just developed something in dev and now I need to move it over to QA, or we're happy with everything in QA. Let's get it into production. Without some automated tools, that can actually be quite a laborious task, to tell you the truth. So there's that side of it, which is sort of common. But then I think everybody comes to the table with their own flavor of business requirements, how they like to do things, the things they need to get done. And that's where the custom stuff comes in still. Absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Well, it's nice to have people like you on projects that can look at the whole range of requirements and figure out what's needed, and then be able to do whatever it takes to get that done. Loren, when you look out at the future, like when you see what the totality of your career has been, right, and then you look out at the future, what do you see out there that excites you? What's on the horizon, not just for you, but maybe for the industry?
Sure. Well, one thing I've seen a bit of, and we have going on at Critigen and some other projects, is sort of that real-time data capture stuff, which is super cool, I think, to be able to make decisions about your data or your infrastructure or whatever it is you're capturing in your GIS based on real-time sensor data, and have based on what's happening out in the field with your assets. I think that is super cool. And I've seen some of that, and I just think that is definitely, I mean, it's here now. It's not really future, it's here now. But I think it's an evolving, fastly evolving area. And then there's the social aspect as well of geography and GIS. What GIS can capture with the input from so I started this out with social media, right?
Right. We'll end with social media. So go ahead.
With social media, but like how GIS can be utilized in that social media space and capturing social media input. I guess again, it's like another big data idea, and I guess it all sort of centers around big data, right? Whether it's sensor data flooding in from your assets out in the field, or social media, but how to be able to handle all that data and make decisions with it on maps, right?
Well, partly that's part of the answer. Well, not the answer. It's part of that big question: how much of the data that's being created and we know that there's this huge amount of data that's being created every day around the world, and how much of that has some spatial relevance to it? Like, what is the how much of the social media that is created and done and broadcast out to the world, how much of that has some social or spatial relevance to it as well? I'm going to just put this comment by Darren. He says, is that a reference to the Internet of Things tech for real-time data capture to GIS?
Yeah, I suppose it would be. Yeah. IoT. Yeah.
Right, and how that and what you're saying is, how do we incorporate that into systems of analysis? How is that visualized, and what's the role of GIS in making sense out of all that data, all that IoT data?
Right. Is it sensors along your maybe your pipeline? Imagine a water pipeline with different sensors along it. and all that's coming in real time into your GIS, and you're showing, you know, a dashboard where things go green, things are good. Oh, maybe there's a little problem over here right now, you know, and something's going yellow on a map. And
I don't think you know about this project, but because it was a quiet little project that Beth helped me with in New York City, but with the Department of Health, where we helped them do some things with this app that they created. But part of the app was to send people to different locations throughout the city to have medications dispensed to them in a time of emergency. And what they were incorporating into that application was social media data about, you know, from, you know, mining the social media data that talked about who needed the medications and where they were getting them, so that they had like real-time information of where people thought there was medication that they could verify what the system said about the availability of medication in an emergency, because they recognized maybe that the data wouldn't always be exactly correct. So they were kind of triangulating on where is the medication right now, where can we send people, and that
that's really cool.
That used, you know, real-time input together with social media input to come up with those answers.
And it's validating and making the data better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not assuming you know everything. It's assuming that you can figure everything out if you have enough data to put into a system of analysis. So anyway, hey, that's all cool stuff. And Loren, I'm really excited to have you on. We talked a lot about the utility network. We talked a lot about, you know, how that gets done, what the data model, you know, the value of that data model for utilities, and talked a little bit about Critigen and our people, and people like Bruce Taylor who weighed in today that we respect a lot. And then and it's exciting to hear what's on the horizon for you. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Bruce.
You know, for joining me today, and I really appreciate the fact that you're doing the social media thing for us, and invite anybody who's listening in to jump on our social media feeds and see what Loren, you know, ask a question there and see what Loren comes up with, because then he's not off the cuff and he doesn't have to answer it with you staring him in the face. And I'll bet you get a few more words out of him that way.
Thanks. I like the challenge, Bruce. That's good.
Yeah, you bet. All right. So thank you for being here today. I want to thank all the people who listened in today. Thanks for those of you who listened in on Clubhouse. If you listened in on Clubhouse and you want to give me some feedback on how that worked for you, if that's worth the time to make that happen every week, just hit me on a DM on Instagram. That's kind of the way Clubhouse is done. So DM me on Instagram and let me know what you think. And that'll help me to know whether or not we should continue to try and multi-stream it, both on LinkedIn and on Clubhouse. Thanks everybody for being here today. Loren, thank you. You're a good friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
Appreciate it, Bruce. Thanks so much.
Everybody.
It was really fun.
Bye now.
Bye.